Okay, so thank you everybody for introducing yourself. So let's make a start. To introduce myself, my name is Emma Prevet. I am the lead visiting fellow for the South Coast cluster. So I am down in Bournemouth. I'm pretty sure that you guys are all up in Swindon and Wiltshire. So I am in sunny Bournemouth, and it is actually sunny at the moment, which is quite nice. I am, as I said, the lead visiting fellow for the South Coast cluster and the facilitator for the Teaching School Hub. I am the ECF lead at Glenmore and Winton Academies in Winton, Bournemouth. So I'm going to take you through today's session. I'm really hoping that we'll try and get in just under an hour, so we'll try not to keep everybody too long. Again, you would have remembered this hopefully from your first conference that you would have done last term. So I won't go too long through them, but obviously the be brave part is about taking part, be present. There'll be times when I use cold call or asking you to put in the chat, or we'll also use breakout rooms. So just please do take part. If you have questions as well, then please do ask them. Obviously, be kind. There may be some level of confidentiality, or we may have to discuss things, and just be kind to other people's opinions and the suggestions that they put forward. And obviously, just be present. I'm sure you are all very much the same as me, that we are very, very busy, especially at the moment. And there is marking and emails and all sorts going on left, right and centre. But please do just give yourself this hour, if that, today, to be a part of your progress as an early career teacher. So today is split into 4 sections. We're going to start by looking at the learning outcomes for the session in just a moment. And I'm going to give you a chance to talk to each other about your experience of using routines in the classroom to manage behaviour. We then move on to a short section introducing routines, where we consider why routines are important for managing behaviour before we see an example of a routine being planned and delivered. The third section involves participants, so you guys planning a new routine. And the final section gives you a chance to practice delivering this new routine and get some peer feedback. So we're going to start by having a look at what we're going to be learning about. So you may have already covered some of this session's content in the behaviour strand on Step Lab. There will be some overlap. However, the aim of the session is to provide you with the opportunity to see additional models of routines. Obviously, looking back now, we are in the instruction strand, going back and just recapping some of that behaviour work, and also having a practice of using routines and receiving feedback on them. Obviously, revisiting content a number of times is going to help with your understanding. Everything you learn in this session needs to be adapted when applied into your own school, and this will require you to discuss with your colleagues how they create a safe environment in your school, seek their support when dealing with any bullying or challenging behaviour, and understand your school's relevant policies on managing behaviour, such as the anti-bullying policy. When supporting pupils in your own school to meet high academic and behavioural expectations, speaking to colleagues will help you to better understand your own pupils' individual circumstances better, and thereby help you build more trusting relationships with the pupils. Speaking to the parents and carers will also help you with this. For example, telling parents and carers the positives as well as communicating more negative aspects of their child's behaviour. So let's have a look at the learning outcomes for today. I'm going to give you a moment to read through those. So before we get into the content, I want you to think about your own experience of using routines in the classroom. So I'm going to give you 8 minutes to discuss your experience of using routines in the classroom to help manage pupils' behaviour. I'm going to put you into groups of 4, hopefully might go with 3, we'll see how many we've got now. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms to reflect and share using the prompts on the slide. We will then come back and I might use a bit of cold call or chat to discuss what you have discussed in your breakout rooms. Okay, so hopefully everybody has a copy of the workbook with them. If you don't, please could you just let me know quickly. You should have been sent it earlier by Giselle, but it looks like that. If you don't have it printed, you can use the digital copy. It's absolutely fine, but I can also put a link in the chat if you don't have one. But this is going to be really, really useful for you for today. I don't think you haven't got one. Let me just get you the link. Okay, bear with me a second. I can't remember which slide I put the link in. Okay, bear with me one moment. Okay, just give me 1 minute. For some reason, it is not letting me access the link, and I'll pop it in the chat. But in the meantime, just while I get that for you, I'm going to put you out into the breakout rooms, and then I can bring it back after that. The activity that you're going to do now is regarding the Mr. Price scenario that's on the screen. So that will be in your, for those of you that do have the workbook, it is in there on page 3. So when you see the red dot in the top right hand corner, that is the page number that is relevant to what we're doing. So while I break you out, I will just get the link for those of you that don't have it. So I'm going to break it out, as I said, into small rooms, and then if you can please have a chat about the situation that is on the board. So on the board, I've been teaching too long. If you want to please, sorry, just read the scenario that's on the screen, and then I'm going to just give you a moment while I set up the breakout rooms. Okay, so I'm going to open the breakout rooms now, so you won't be able to see that, but I will be able to put in the chat the link so that hopefully that gets through to you while you're still in there. We're going to go just for 4 minutes to try and keep this as quick as possible. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms now. You'll be sent there, and I'll call you all back in after 4 minutes. So if you can please just reflect on the questions that are at the bottom there. So the times in your lessons when pupils display off-task behaviour that have the potential to develop into more challenging behaviour. And do you have a routine to guide your pupils' behaviour for that part? So is there a specific part, like a pinch point in your lesson, that can result in bad behaviour? And do you have a routine at the moment that's trying to help that? So I'm going to put the breakout rooms on now. Okay, Devlin, sorry, it's not showing your first name, but it's showing that you are on a device that won't allow me to assign you to a breakout room for some reason. So you might just have to talk to me. So it's Michaela, sorry. Michaela, are you able to unmute? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so it's saying that I don't know if you're on a different device, but it won't allow me to assign you to a breakout room.
Oh, I don't know why. I couldn't make it home in time, so I'm still at school. I'm just on my work computer, so I'm not sure why it won't let me be on a breakout room.
I don't know. Teams is a bit funny sometimes. But yeah, if I just try again, yeah, it's just saying that this person is using a device or version of Teams. So maybe it's like a different version of Teams. Or are you on the web one or the app?
App.
It should be fine. You just have to talk to me. So
that's fine. That's fine.
What do you think are there times in your lessons when people display off-task behaviour?
The case study literally explains, like, one of my year 8 classes, like, majority of the class come in, they settle really quickly, but I have this little group of boys who like always come in a little bit like rowdy, like not prepared for the lesson. They tend to settle like quickly, but after a few reminders. But there's this one boy who is always off task like throughout the whole lesson, which does develop into more challenging behavior. At the start of my lessons, depending on like the time of day, I tend to have, if it's like a lesson after like break time or lunchtime, I tend to just start with them like standing behind their chairs and they like sit down once they're all quiet, just because that then like everyone's at the same place with the lesson, like the lesson objective and tasks up on the board, like they can all just get started with it. Or for Key Stage 3 classes, and obviously being an English teacher, I start with silent reading. Like they read silently for like the first like 5-10 minutes of lesson before we start learning.
Let's try and get them like calm and ready to learn. Yeah,
because we at Abbeyfield we have like a really clear behavior policy. So but with like some students, like obviously you have to take like their SEN needs into consideration. So it's not always as easy as like 1, 2, third warning out of the classroom. So I also tend to do like, if it's more of like a whole class or like multiple people kind of disruption, I do like minutes, like break time or like end of the day. Like I don't even tell them, I just write it on the board and start like tallying. Or I just like put names on the board. I don't feel like you always have to like call out the behavior, because that can make the rest of the class off topic.
Yeah, that's something that we're going to discuss a little bit later about like least invasive interventions. So yeah, definitely agree. Great. Okay, so we'll have a look a little bit more at routines a little bit later on. So I'm going to start calling everybody back in. If you could just pop yourself in. Oh, hi everyone.
Hello.
It's the shock of being called back in again. Okay, I think that is everyone back in. So I'm really interested to hear from a couple of you about the routines that you discussed. So Adam, what were you discussing?
We just spoke about the sort of routines in the classroom to get like a to have like a routine, so an expectation of what they're expected to do when as soon as they turn up into the classroom. So whether that be walk in and you'll just get straight on with the task and making sure they know that they need to do it straight away. And then like obviously praise as well. If you see them doing it correctly, then it's like use them as an example for the other students who realise actually they get praised if they do the correct thing. And then some of the ones who don't want to do it, be like, oh, well, they're getting praised, I want praise as well. Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes praise is underappreciated when we're trying to battle bad behaviour or poor behaviour. Praise feels a bit funny to use sometimes, but highlighting, and I think also if you are going to give praise, it needs to be very explicit as to why they're getting praised, so it's easy for others to model. But yeah, definitely. Jack, what were you guys discussing? Jack, are you able to unmute? Oh, I struggle to hear each other. Oh no, okay. All right, we'll leave it there then. So I'm just putting the link for the workbook in the chat, so hopefully everyone can access that now. So those of you that don't have it, if you could just see, hopefully that should work and you should be able to download a Word document. But we will move on. So hopefully that everyone has been able to access that. So we're going to have a quick look at why routines are so important. Now, obviously, a lot of you will know this already. In the reflection activity that we did just now, that discussion, there was a teacher who was dealing with pupils' off-task behaviour at the start of lessons. Mr. Price realises that creating a routine will make his expectations for how lessons should begin completely clear for pupils. It will then be easier for him to spot off-task behaviour and correct it, reducing negative behaviour and creating a norm for positive behaviour in class.
This will make the classroom feel like a safe and predictable place. Creating this sort of inclusive environment in which pupils feel emotionally safe, in which there are clear rules, predictable consequences, and positive goals is good for those with and without SEND. By removing distractions from the environment, such as noise, all pupils with their diverse needs will be able to focus their attention and their cognitive effort on their learning in their working memory. Additionally, a safe classroom with positive interactions will support pupils' emotional well-being, also enabling them to focus on their learning better. All of this is especially important for pupils of SEND who already find learning challenging and will really benefit from you optimising the physical and social environment of the classroom for learning. I don't think I'm supposed to do that yet. Mr. Price will also find routines create more time for learning, increases pupils' independence, and hopefully provide him with additional energy for teaching. So more challenging pupil behaviour should reduce in a calm, predictable classroom, but if a pupil does not display this sort of behaviour, Mr. Price should follow his school's behaviour policy and issue the necessary sanctions, and call for support from more senior colleagues if necessary, as he has the right to this support. By asking for support and getting training from his colleagues to follow his school's wider behaviour management system, Mr. Price is contributing positively to a consistent approach to behaviour management in his school. Only if all teachers follow a behaviour management system with consistency, giving sanctions and rewards as outlined in it, will it be effective. Asking for support from senior colleagues is part of this, so that pupils will see that all the teachers have the same expectations regarding behaviour. For example, it's so important for Mr. Price to know who to speak to about any safeguarding concerns in his school, which would be the DSL, the Designated Safeguarding Lead, and report them immediately. He should also read his school's anti-bullying policy so that he can respond quickly to any behaviour that threatens the emotional safety of pupils in his care. Before we move on to look at examples of routines, I want to look in more detail at how teachers should respond to this sort of behaviour. I'm just going to give you a moment to read that. So this is from the DFE's website. Bullying is often motivated by prejudice against particular groups. For example, on grounds of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, special educational needs or disabilities, or because a child is adopted, in care, or has caring responsibilities. It might be motivated by actual differences between children or perceived differences. Low-level disruption and the use of offensive language can in itself have a significant impact on its target. If left unchallenged or dismissed as banter or horseplay, it can also lead to reluctance to report other behaviour. Early intervention can help to set clear expectations of the behaviour that is and isn't acceptable and help stop negative behaviours escalating. If a teacher identifies any behaviour, such as bullying or behaviour which threatens the emotional safety of pupils, then they need to respond immediately following their school's anti-bullying policy, and again, calling on colleagues for support and training in implementing it effectively. So that's just there to highlight the wider importance of behaviour management within our classrooms, because although it's about making it a calm and effective learning environment, there is an underlying cause for making sure that all of our pupils are safe when they're with us. Okay, so it is useful to have routines for these things because pupils do them all the time. So these are the things that are on the board. In the chat, can you pick one of these points and suggest why it might be important to have routines at that time in a lesson? So pick any of those that are on the screen, and in the chat, I'd like you to just say which one and why it's important to have a routine then. It can be any of those. Hopefully we get a little bit of a variety across the 8. Not all pick the same one. Okay, so Victor, why is a routine at entry and exit important? Jess, yeah. So when they enter and leave, they're prepared to learn. It's calm. Jack, totally agree. What to do if you're stuck, develops into independence. Why else might you not want calling out or miss, I'm stuck, or I can't do it? Like, what else? Why might we not want that? Alex, completely agree. Making sure that they're calm, the transition from your lesson into the next one. Michaela, 100%. Yeah, there's some information in the workbook about examples of routines around pair and group work and pair discussions. 100% making sure they remain on task and that time is used effectively and not lost. Yeah, group work, really interesting actually. Learning to identify and use your own strengths, developing humility to be able to identify other strengths and ask them for help. Yeah, really important. And also the routine around that might be making that crystal clear that it's okay to ask other people for help and really, really encouraging those sorts of routines. And you could even build a routine around that conversation. Victor, yeah, 100%. That it stops those conversations that are outside the classroom coming in. And a focused mindset. Amazing. Great. So I agree with all of those. And I think that actually we don't even realize sometimes how many routines we develop as teachers, and we kind of get into eventually in our own way of things. And I'm sure that you're finding now as your first year as an ECT, even as a comparison to when you were a trainee last year, sometimes you can feel as a trainee that you have to sort of match your teaching style to the teachers that you work with to get their approval, and then suddenly as an ECT you have that freedom and you can start to develop how you are as a teacher and create your own routines. And I do think that actually if we pick it apart, we have so many routines that we develop over time. Okay, so we are going to watch a short video showing an entry routine being reinforced in a Key Stage 2 classroom. So I'm pretty sure everyone here said they are secondary, and I'm sure you've already noticed that a lot of the videos on Step Lab are primary, so apologies for that. As you watch the video, pay attention to Nick's instructions, any reminders he gives, and how he positively reinforces the routine. Really hoping that it's going to play. Please could you just pop something in the chat if you either can't hear or see the video. So it's going to play now.
The way that pupils enter the classroom can have a big impact on the start of the lesson. We want to help them enter calmly and focus their attention on what they're about to learn. Imagine I'm teaching a Year 4 class. I've collected them from the playground after break, and they are lined up waiting to enter the classroom. When they enter, there's an activity asking them to complete punctuation errors. This is something that they have practiced before. I know that my pupils can all access them.
Okay, so hopefully everyone was able to hear that and that you stopped having the second part. I think it might have been because I was still on sound when it was playing. So hopefully you were able to still hear that fine afterwards. So we don't need to watch that again. Okay, so if you have your workbook, there is space in here for you to make any notes of what you've seen on page 4. So just at the bottom, there's a little note section. And we've also got the plan on the next page that we're going to have a look at. So hopefully you noticed how Nick uses instructions which are manageable, specific and sequential. This is something you need to do when you create instructions for your routine, which we're going to do in a bit. He also uses the same words each time he delivers the routine with non-verbal cues, which he also uses to remind any pupils not complying. He identifies pupils doing the right thing rather than the wrong thing, as this positively reinforces this behaviour and uses the power of social norms to get others to comply. This is the plan that Nick created before teaching his class this entry routine. So this is at the top of page 5 on your workbook. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to read through that plan. It's on the screen and on page 5. Okay. Before teaching a new routine to a class, it is important that we plan for this and practice delivering it to make sure that it's going to work. Part of this process involves identifying what pupils might do when not complying with our routine and identifying how we're going to respond to that. For more challenging non-compliance, such as not responding to reminders or refusing, participants, so you, will need to follow your school's behaviour policy regarding sanctions, as well as seeking advice from more senior colleagues if necessary. You'll be taking through this part into the next part of the session, so you don't need to spend too long looking at this in your workbook. There is a process for establishing a new routine in your classroom, and we're going to have a look at it now. First, we plan the routine and practice delivering it without the pupils present to check it works and build our confidence. So much the same as you've done deliberate practice in your mentor meetings, hopefully. We can do that when we're practicing delivering routines as well. Then we communicate or teach it to our pupils. You'd want to think carefully about how you would do this. For example, you might spend the last 5 minutes of a lesson explaining and practicing a new entry routine before expecting pupils to use it the following day. Following this, we reinforce the routine by following it in a consistent way every single time, so that it becomes habitual and our pupils don't even need to think about what to do. Finally, we should always revisit routines and refine them if they are not working, or get rid of them if they are no longer needed. For example, when working in early years, we might tweak the tidy up routine with new songs to motivate pupils to tidy. Maybe we could try that with secondary as well. At the start of the school year, it's worthwhile setting aside time to practice routines to ensure they are properly established. In this session, we should be focusing on the first stage, where we plan a routine and practice delivering it. Animations on this aren't great. Okay, so this is where we're starting today, with the planning a routine and practicing it. So during this section, you are going to see me model how to plan a routine one step at a time. You're going to create your own routine alongside me, so you can practice completing all the steps with my support. There are 5 steps to planning a good routine, so we're going to have a look at the first one. The first step is to clarify the routine and the rationale behind using it. It's an important step because if you can't explain why you need a routine, then there is a chance it's not needed. It's important to note here that when you are choosing routines for your classroom, you need to ensure that it is in line with your school's behaviour policy and ethos of the school. For example, if your school's policy sets out that you should personally welcome each pupil into your classroom as they enter to build positive relationships between staff and pupils, then this is a routine you need to establish. So this is a model that I've created myself. There is another one in your booklets. So if you turn to page 6, the bottom half there has a different model around pupils engaging in pair talk. Now, I'm a maths teacher and I didn't feel like that was relevant to me. So, I mean, we don't do pair talk at all. We don't do group work in maths at all. So it wasn't really something that I felt like I could give you an authentic discussion on. So I've changed the model to something to suit how I teach. So that's about my entry routines into my classroom. So the first part, the clarifying the routine and the rationale, is separated into 2 parts. What am I expecting and why I need this routine? When my pupils enter my classroom, I greet them at the door and hand them a starter mat. They go to their desk in silence, take out their planner and equipment, sit down and start working immediately and in silence. My why is to ensure that pupils enter in a calm and silent manner and start working the moment they enter my classroom, minimizing any dead time. When you first teach pupils a new routine, it's important to tell them why you're introducing it, and you can use this rationale to help with it. So now it's your turn. I'd like you to think about a routine that you would like to either implement, so one that a section of your time that would benefit from having a new routine, or one that you already have that could do with being improved or refined. So I'm just going to give you a moment to have a think about that first. You might have discussed one earlier in your breakout rooms. So some ideas for this could be, an entry routine or an exit routine. It could be handing out or collecting books. It might be something around discussions, pair working, or group working. It could be a transition between I do, we do, you do. It might be using mini whiteboards. It could be what students do when they are stuck and how they get through if you have, I can't remember the B's where it's book, buddy, boss, you know, those sorts of things. It could be anything, any routine that's relevant to your classroom. And then on page 7 of your workbook, I'd like you to have a go at clarifying that routine and the rationale for that. I would recommend that it's different to mine or the one that's in the workbook if possible. But if you want to choose one of those, that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to have a go at writing that down. Okay, so I'm going to ask some of you to share. Michaela, what was your routine that you chose?
My routine was the paired/group work one, because in English we do a lot of that, and I especially struggle to make sure that students remain on task when I give them the freedom to do paired work and group work.
Yeah, okay, great. Tom, how about you? Tom, can you unmute yourself or use the chat if not? Okay, I'm not sure that that is working, so let's try Jess.
Hiya, so I'm a PE teacher, so what I do, we get them all to line up quietly in like the lines for their lessons before, and then group by group we'll let them in slowly and quietly, and they have precisely 7 minutes to get changed, and normally if they take any longer then there's a consequence for that, and basically we just do that so they don't like take the mick and waste time changing and like, well yeah, have dead time really.
So is there anything in that routine that you would potentially like to improve or refine, or is that kind of already a routine that's there?
Yeah, it's partially there. I mean, getting ready in 7 minutes isn't always great, but I'd say basically have more control when they line up in the beginning, because they do all the groups tend to chat a lot, so making sure they're all silent, wait, and like they're all ready in their groups before we get there, I think I'll change.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so the next part then, step 2, is about identifying an ideal pupil. So just like in lessons, we need to have a clear idea of success in our heads before we script how to get there. And it's the same for running a routine. So by doing this, it will help us to identify pupils who are off task, but more importantly, potentially praise those who are complying, and build social norms around them. So for me, my ideal pupil enters my classroom calmly with a polite and friendly greeting. They take their starter mat, silently get to their desk, take out their planner and their equipment, and immediately start working on the questions. All this is done in silence, obviously, in an ideal world. So that's what good looks like to me in this routine, just how we look for modeling good, or whatever, how you might word it in your school, in our lessons. So I'd like you to now please have a go at what your ideal pupil would look like in this situation. So this is still at the bottom of page 7. So can you just write a sentence or two about what good looks like? So your ideal pupil following your routine, please. I'm just going to give you about 90 seconds for this one. Okay, and moving on to step 3. So now we know what behaviours we want, we can script our routine instructions to achieve this. And what makes a good set of instructions? We've already considered what made Nick's instructions earlier. for his routine effective. But now we're going to look in more detail at how to create good instructions. I'll give you a minute to read through the cheat sheet that's in your workbooks. That's in the middle of page 7, highlighting all the key elements to include. But just going to note as well that it's important to add a sort of check for understanding before setting pupils off on any task, not just routines. But yeah, that's an important one to draw your attention to. So let's see a model for this. So these are my instructions for my expected entry routine. So when you come to your maths lesson, you will line up silently outside my classroom to the right. I will greet you at the door, just there, and hand you that day's starter mat. You will then silently make your way to your desk, take out your planner and equipment, and place them on your desk. You will then take your seat and make a start on the questions on your starter mat. Remember to always show your workings. Connor, what do you need out on your desk? Great, planner and equipment. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, we are going to practice this now. And at that point, I would get them out their seats, get them to line up again, and we do it again. It's something that I have had to do many times with some of my boys. So that is my example of how my instructions would look. And as I said, you've got the cheat sheet on your book as well, in your workbook, sorry. So as a reminder, we've got that they are manageable, specific, sequential, visible. You check for understanding. There are non-verbal reminders, and you use your voice and your body language. So I'd like you now, please, to have a go at planning what exactly you would say. So you're kind of going to script your routine and exactly how you would give that to your pupils. So I'm going to give you a little bit longer for this one. This one will be 3 minutes again. So if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. But if you can now have a go, please, at scripting your instructions for your routine. So this is for the first time that you introduce it. Okay, so moving on to step 4. Some pupils will obviously find it harder to follow routines than others, and you may need to deal with non-compliant behaviour. It's useful when introducing a routine to predict what non-compliant behaviour you will have in order to plan a response to it. So for me, the non-compliance that I might expect would be talking in the corridor or being disruptive in the corridor before they've even lined up, coming into the classroom in a noisy and disruptive way, talking to peers as they walk in or go to their seats, not taking out planner and equipment, not attempting any questions on the starter mat, or talking during the starter mat. So they are the potential behaviours of non-compliance that I might expect to see around this routine. So again, turning back to you now, I'm going to just give you again another 90 seconds for this one because it's quite easy to think about how the routine might not be followed. So I'm just going to give you 90 seconds to list these ones down in your workbook. Okay, so let's look at the final step now. This is often the best first response due to it having very little impact on the flow of the lesson, is having our planned responses. So in order to tackle non-compliant behaviour, we need to have a clear response. In the first instance, this should be quick, such as a non-verbal reminder. This is what we're going to have a look at now. As I've mentioned earlier, if this doesn't work, then it is important for you to discuss with your colleagues and refer to your school behaviour policy about what to do next. And I mentioned that in my planned responses. So I've gone through what my potential non-compliant behaviours would have been. So for example, if there is talking in the corridor, I might just go like this as a quick reminder that they should be in silence, and again give a warning if necessary. When they're coming into the classroom, if they are noisy and disruptive, I may need to say their name. So it might just be Ted and a good old teacher look, and a calm reminder of expectations if necessary. So it might just be, Ted, I have asked that you come in to my classroom in a calm and silent manner. And that sometimes is enough. Again, if it still proceeds, then it might be that, again, a warning for us is needed to be given, but it will be relevant to your behaviour system. If they're talking to peers, same thing again. If they are not taking out their planner, or if as I'm moving around, I can see they haven't taken out their planner and equipment, it might just be a tap on the desk that I'm expecting to see something there. If they are not attempting any questions, again, it might be that I tap, again, a least invasive intervention of just tapping on a particular question as if to say that you need to do this. And then potentially say, are you stuck? Do you need some help with this? Or point them in the direction of a previous starter mat or something in their book where we've worked on a similar question. And if they're talking, again, it might just be that or a teacher look. Again, potentially saying their name. Sometimes it's enough to just say Connor, and that's it. Again, if possible, you want to go down the least invasive intervention route to just minimise disruption to the rest of the class. But then, as I've mentioned, using the behaviour system to follow. So the last one of these then for you is to have a go at planning your responses to the non-compliant behaviours that you identified in step 4. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes for this one, because it might take a little bit longer for you to think about how you respond. But please do have a think about your non-verbal reminders that you might use first, whether that's a gesture or pointing or tapping or something like that, and then what you would do following that. So 2 minutes on this one. Okay, so that's the end of the planning section. So we're just going to go on to our last little bit of practicing. So I'm supposed to give myself a run through of me practicing this, but you've heard me deliver this already, so I kind of feel like there's not much point in that. So I would have just modeled this again for you, but just with the a little line at the start there as giving that rationale as to why I'm introducing a new routine. So I'm going to introduce a routine for when you enter my classroom because I want to make sure you know what to do and we don't waste learning time at the start of our lessons. And then going into the instructions that we had earlier. I'm going to put you back out into breakout rooms, but this time just into pairs. I'm literally going to ask you to go through your instructions once each. And then if you can please feed back to your partner using the success criteria, which were on page 7. So that pink box that we had. So they were the manageable, specific, sequential, visible, checking for understanding, non-verbal cues, and voice and body language. So literally just give your partner one tip that they could do better for next time. And then we are pretty much there. So I'm just going to redo your breakout rooms. So you're going to practice your instructions, give them to your partner. Your partner's going to give you one feedback piece, and then you swap. And I will call you back in about just over 3 minutes. Okay, so Michaela, you are with me again. I've just called Victor back in. So Victor, sorry, I put you into a room by yourself because Michaela's Teams isn't letting her go into Teams at the moment, into breakout rooms. So I'm just going to let Victor and Michaela, if you guys can do yours together, that would be great. Michaela, do you want to go first?
Yeah, am I just reading the instructions that I came up with?
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously I teach English, and my biggest thing is making sure students stay on topic when I set them off on a task. So my instructions were, I'm going to set you off on a task now. You can only talk to the person sitting next to you, and if I can hear individual voices, then you are talking too loud. You have 5 minutes to complete this task, and please take notes as you discuss. I will be picking on people to feedback after the 5 minutes are up. Any questions, please raise your hand.
Victor, what would your response or feedback be for Michaela?
I think it was. What should I say? I think it was specific. I think it was manageable, and I think it was sequential. And I also like the time aspect when she gave them time as to when to finish. So then they have a perspective as to the time limit. I think it was good.
Great. Yeah, the only thing I'd add, Michaela, is if you have some non-verbal cues in there as well, which obviously it's hard to read out on a microphone, but just potentially thinking about some non-verbal gestures or something that you might add in or reminders for when they start. Great. Victor, can you read out your instructions?
Okay. Just a second, let me find it. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going here. So when you okay. So before you come into my maths lesson, I would like you to line up outside quietly against the wall outside the classroom, jackets off, with your behavior cards out. I'll greet you outside and let you in. Make your way straight to your desk and start with the starter activity straight away, getting your equipment out.
Great. Michaela, what would your feedback be?
I thought it was really good. Like, I liked how direct it was, like clear instructions before you even enter the classroom to make sure that there's a calm start. And even like when they get into the classroom, there's instructions for the expectations that are expected, like get your equipment out, sit down quietly, and get on with the starter. I thought it was good.
Yeah, totally agree. Again, the only thing I would add is potentially having that check for understanding. So having some sort of question as to if anyone has any questions about it, or maybe get them to repeat one of the instructions back to you. So, you know, which side of my door do you stand on, or something like that. Great, so I'm going to bring everybody back in now, hopefully, if it'll let me. Just to finish off for today. Okay, just waiting on 2 more from room 2, that's closing. This has just made me go completely pink. Okay, so it looks like we may have lost some people on the way somehow. But that is everything from me for today. So if I can just ask that you go back to page 1 on your workbook. I think it's page 2 actually. There is a little section at the bottom just for a quick reflection on the key takeaways from today's session. So hopefully you have an idea of how to build a routine. And my main thing, the main takeaway for you, is to give it that time to structure how you would actually verbalize and deliver those instructions, and then really thinking about how you're going to deal with any non-compliance, because at the end of the day, we're going to have to deal with it. So giving yourself that opportunity to not only potentially script your routine and your instructions, but also have a practice of it, because we all know how, hopefully all know how important deliberate practice is, and then just, yeah, preempting any non-compliance, shall we say. So hopefully you have found today useful. Thank you very much for attending. I'd really appreciate if you have any feedback on today's session, anything you found particularly helpful, anything you might suggest changing. I'm going to stop recording now so that you don't have to worry about anything being recorded.